How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi, Daf 90 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, your friends. Yo, friends, Daf Tzadi, that's big stuff. 90. We're going to get to the end of BavaMetzia, friends. I feel like getting to the end of BavaMetzia is gonna be like reaching the peak of Mount Everest. I've never done that. But we're going to reach the peak of BavaMetzia. Wow, that's going to be amazing. All right. Let us start. Okay, so today we talk about Leisachsim Shor Bedisho. Is that what we've been talking about before? I think so. Oh man, I don't know. I'm so confused. What are we talking about? I think we've been talking more about like workers being able to eat. So now we're going to talk about Leisachsim Shor Bedisho. I think it's going to take a few daf. The Gemara really gives quite a focus on this Isser of Leisachsim Shor Bedisho. I went on YouTube and I typed in, I don't know, like ox threshing wheat or something. It's very interesting. The oxen basically just walk all over the wheat. You just take a bunch of like wheat and throw them on the floor, and just the oxes like walk on it. That's what threshing is. Interesting. Yeah. And harvesting, when an ox is harvesting, what does that mean? So apparently the ox isn't actually doing the harvesting. The ox is just like pulling a wagon that you throw the wheat on. So like people harvest, people are like cutting and stuff. But then the ox is just like, instead of them having to like throw stuff into like a basket and schlep the basket someplace, the ox has this like big wagon behind it, and they're just like dumping all this stuff into the wagon, and the ox is just schlepping that. I think that's the role of the ox in the harvesting. But yeah, okay. Farming. All right. Got any farmers here in Babylon Talmud? Anybody got an ox? Anybody have an ox that gave you? Well, I should have asked this at the beginning of Bava Kama. Should have asked this about 8 months ago or something. Let's go weiter. We're going to start on Daf Peites and Beis all the way at the bottom. Last line. Taner Rabbanan. Sorry, Mom. Taner Rabbanan. Paras Meraxis, but Tvuot. Cows that are Meraxis on Tvuot. It says Rashi, the bottom Rashi on the Daf. Sheshorin sorin b'mayim, they take barley and they soak them in water. Umiyabshin osam b'toner, then they dry them out in an oven. V'dashin osam b'paris lasik kliposan v'hu chushla, and then they thresh them to remove the husk. But apparently, I think the point is that at that point it's already. I think the point is that at that point it's already like chayv and trumas and meiser or something. V'adashos b'truma u'meiser, and those that are and oxen that are threshing truma and meiser, so it's already truma and meiser. So the ox is not allowed to eat truma and meiser. So therefore, you do muzzle the cow. Now this daf is going to be a little bit confusing in that it's saying. So look, eino over mishum bal tachsum. Oh, double negatives. Human beings are not wired to deal with double negatives. Okay. So I'm going to just focus on the positive. I like to focus on the positive, by the way. I know I'm a negative kind of guy, but I'm not really negative. I complain. I'm not negative. There's a huge... Complaining is not a negative thing. Complaining, there's nothing wrong with that. Being negative is negative. But I try to be positive. I try to be positive. For example, I don't say don't power... Actually, I do say don't power wash. But... well, yeah, I guess I say don't power wash. That's true. I do say don't power wash. That's true. That's true. What else don't I like? I don't like power washing. That's true. I guess I do kind of. But as a general, as a general like way, like life view, I'll tell you, like I'm a positive person. Really. Really, I don't like to say no. I like to try to think how I could say yes. Really, I'm not kidding. Anyways, why did I say this? Because double negative. Eino over mishum bal tachsum. Oy vavoy, it blows your mind. So what's bal tachsum? Bal tachsum is that you're not allowed to muzzle your animal, meaning you have to let it eat. Okay, so eino over mishum bal tachsum, meaning you're allowed. Oh my God, it blows my mind. You are not violating, don't muzzle your animal, meaning you're allowed to muzzle your animal. You're allowed to muzzle your animal, and there's no problem with that. What about lotachsim shor bedisho? Eino over. You're not violating lotachsim shor bedisho. You're allowed to muzzle your animal. That we're going to focus on. We're going to give it a positive spin. You're allowed to muzzle your animal. Okay, you're allowed to muzzle the animal so that the animal doesn't eat, because the animal is not allowed to eat truma and meiser. Okay, so v'adoshos b'truma meiser, if you have an animal that is an ox that's threshing truma and meiser, eino over mishum bal tachsum, i.e. you're allowed to muzzle the animal and prevent it from eating. I assume the point is that you're even encouraged to, because it's not allowed to eat truma and meiser. Aval, but so that people don't get the wrong idea, right? They're going to see animals threshing, and they're muzzled, and they're going to say, yo, what's the dealio? Why is he muzzling his animals when they're threshing? So what you do is, maybe bull may also hamin, so you take a handful of that same species, and you put it in front of its mouth. So meaning, if it's threshing wheat, so you'll take some wheat, and so it's not going to eat the wheat itself because it's truma and meiser, but you could take some wheat that's chulin and kind of, put it in some kind of bag or something in front of the cow's mouth, and the cow will eat that. So nobody's going to say, wait, what's the deal? Why is the cow threshing and it's being preventing from eating? No, so what you would do is you would just give it chulin to eat rather than eating what it's threshing, which is truma and meiser. Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, maybe karshinim take vetch, and you feed it vetch. So even if it's threshing wheat, you give it vetch. I don't really know what vetch is, but I like the word. Shakashinim yafis la minakol, because vetch is the best, even better than wheat, even better than barley. Vetch is the best, so give it that. All right. Viramini, but we have a contradiction. Here we go. Parsamaraxis betvue. Okay, so this parus hamaraxis, I don't know, this barley that was soaked and dried and whatever. I think the point is that it's already chayiv in truma and meiser, I think. And therefore, you do muzzle the animal so that it does not eat it. Ve'adoshes betruma u'meiser over mishum bal tachsum. Okay, I don't really know what the difference is in maraxos in this, but anyways, if it's threshing truma and meiser over mishum bal tachsum, so then you're not allowed to muzzle it. And if you do, you will be in violation of leitachsim. Interesting. Let's go back to for a second. If a yid rents out his cow to a nachri, and the yid instructs the nachri, hey, muzzle the cow's mouth, I don't want it eating so much, whatever it is, muzzle the cow's mouth. So you have a yid instructing a nachri to muzzle his cow's mouth for him while he's threshing, meaning the nachri is renting the cow, and the nachri is going to be using the cow to thresh, and the yid instructs the nachri while the cow is threshing, muzzle its mouth. The yid is not in violation of bal tachsum, i.e., it would be okay. He can instruct the nachri to muzzle the cow. We're going to talk about this a little bit later at the bottom of the Yom. If a yid is renting the cow of a nachri, well then over mishum bal tachsum. He's not allowed to muzzle the cow, and if he does, he's in violation of leisachsum. Kasha truma trume, kasha meiser a meiser. Here we go. So we have a contradiction between the first brisa and the second brisa. The first brisa says that by trumas and meiseris you do muzzle the cow, and the second brisa says that by trumas and meiseris you do not. You're not allowed to muzzle the cow. It's a violation of the leisachsum shobedisha. Ho ho, ho ho, ho ho. So the first brisa says leisachsum does not apply to truma and meiser. The second brisa says you better bet your bottom dollar bal tachsum does apply to truma and meiser. Bishlam truma lekashe. Okay, so here's the answer for truma. Kan bitrume. Kan bigidule trume. This is going to be slow, for the next chunk of Gemara is going to be slow. It's okay, it's manageable, but it's going to be slow. Truma and Gidule Truma. So the first brisa, which says muzzle all you want, there's no violation, there's no issue of leisachsum, muzzle the ox. So that is talking about truma. And the ox can't eat, you can't feed the ox truma. Muzzle the cow. The second brisa, which says losachsum shobedisho applies, you cannot muzzle the cow, is gidule trume. If you take trume and you replant it, so listen to this, friends. So let's say you have a field, and in the field there are 1,000 sheaves of wheat. So you separate 2% for trume, and that is 20 sheaves. Now those sheaves, of course, go to the kohen. But listen to this hack. You say, how about this? Why should I give the sheaves to the kohen? Then it's gone. I lose them. I lose the 20 sheaves. Why don't I replant them? And then they'll grow. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know how planting works, but maybe like 100 sheaves will now grow from, right? These 20 sheaves have like a bunch of seeds and stuff, and I'll get 100 sheaves out of it. Those sheaves will be chulin. And then I'll take 2% of that, which would be 2 sheaves, and then that would be truma. I can replant those. He basically avoids actually having to give away any of his truma. Right? Why should I give it to the kohen? I can just replant it and it'll be chulin. So mida oraise, that works. Mida oraise, if you replant truma, it's chulin. Now mida rabbanon, the rabbis say not to do that. Mida rabbanon, the rabbis say not to do that. But mida oraisa, it's chulin, and therefore, because mida oraisa, it's chulin, well, lo sachsum shor bedisho applies. It's chulin. There you go, friends. So when we say lo sachsum shor bedisho does not apply, and you can muzzle the ox, that is when it's truma, because the ox can't eat truma, so you muzzle the ox. When we say that lo sachsum shor bedisho does apply, do not muzzle the ox, allow it to eat, it's because we're talking about gidule truma, replanted truma, which is chulin mida oraisa, and therefore lasachsim shobedisho applies. Now mida rabbanon, we treat it as truma, but mida oraisa, it's chulin, and therefore lasachsim shobedisho applies. Okay, so where am I? So kasha truma, so kasha ma'aser ma'aser, b'shlama truma like kasha, kan b'truma, kan b'gidule truma. Okay. Meiser kasha. Well, what about, okay, so how do we answer meiser? First we say that you can muzzle the ox for meiser, and then we say you cannot muzzle the ox for meiser. Lo sachsum shobedisho applies for meiser. V'chitema meiser nami lo kasha kan b'meiser kan b'gidule meiser. Okay, so how about this? Let's use the same approach. That when we say muzzle the ox, that's by meiser. When we say don't muzzle the ox, lo sachsum shor bedisho applies, that's by gidule meiser. Here's the thing though. Here's the thing. As I said, by trume, gidule trume is chulin midoraisa, but it's truma midorabbanon, and therefore we need the brisa to tell us that even though midorabbanon it's truma, because midoraisa it's chulin, leisachsum shor bedisho applies when it's gidule truma. The thing is that by meiser there's no such concept, right? Gidule meiser is pashit chulin. There's no meiser midrabanan there. So obviously, sure, lo sachsum shor bedisho would apply. I don't need a brisa to teach me that. So, where am I? Bishlama gidule trume. So I understand why I need a brisa to say that lo sachsum shor bedisho applies to gidule trume, because even though it's truma, gidule trume, even though it's truma, that's only truma midrabanan. But mida oraisa it's chulin, and therefore lasachsum shor bedisho applies. I need that sort of explanation. I need that brisa. Gidule meiser chulin ninhu, but gidule meiser are completely chulin. Obviously, lasachsum shor bedisho applies. If you take untied produce, tevel, or right, and you replant it, or you replant meiser sheni, chulin, it's chulin. So therefore, I don't need a brisa to tell me that gidulei meiser l'sachsim shobadisha would apply. Obviously, it applies. Elaloi kasha b'meiser of meiser sheni. Okay. So rather, let's answer it like this: the second brisa, which says l'sachsim shobadisha applies, that's talking about meiser rishon, because meiser rishon anybody can technically eat it, right? Unlike truma, where right, it's misa b'dei shamayim if a zar eats it, right? Only a kohen can eat it, but meiser technically anybody can eat. So now, so by meiser rishon, the l'sachsim shobadisha applies. My meiser sheni though, it's already more complicated because it has to be in Yerushalayim. Right, let's say the cow is threshing outside of Yerushalayim. So therefore, we say in the first brisa that lo yisachsim shobadisha does not apply, meaning you do muzzle the ox if it's meiser sheni. So the first brisa is talking about meiser sheni, the second brisa is talking about meiser rishon. V'baisem alternatively, hava meiser sheni. Both brises are talking about meiser sheni. Okay, so how come in the first brisa the ox cannot eat it and you do muzzle the animal? And in the second brisa, l'sachsim shobadisha applies, you do not muzzle the animal eats. V'lei kasha harab meir harab Yehuda. Well, one brisa says Reb Meir, one brisa says Reb Yehuda. Harab Meir dama meiser sheni mamin gavoyahu. Reb Meir's opinion is that meiser sheni belongs to God, and therefore the animal can't eat it. And that's the first brisa. So you muzzle the ox. Harab Yehuda, but the second brisa, which says l'sachsim shobadisha applies and the animal eats it, is Reb Yehuda Damar Meiser Sheni Mamun Hedjitu, who says that Meiser Sheni is Mamun Hedjit, and therefore the ox can eat it. And l'sachsim shobadisha applies. Hey Chidami, how can you have Meiser Sheni before it's already threshed? Right? Normally, it would only become meiser after it's threshed. How is it meiser already before it's threshed? Kigon shekdimo b'shibolin. Well, if you already separated the tithes before it was threshed, well then it would already be post. It would be already. Well, I guess if it, if you separated the true right, if you separated the trumas and meisers, and now it's threshing it, and you had already separated, so then it would already be truma and meiser. Well, Rabbi Yehuda, but now according to Rabbi Yehuda, we just said that, well, according to Rabbi Yehuda, meiser sheni is mamun hedjit, and therefore the l'sachsim shobadisha applies. You have to allow the animal to eat, but habai choma. But meiser sheni has to be in Yerushalayim. So why are you allowed to allow the animal to eat outside of Yerushalayim? Well, it was threshing in Yerushalayim. Okay. Iba isema alternatively, leikasha kan b'meiser vade kan b'meiser demai. Alternatively, you can explain these two brises by saying the first one is talking about meiser vadai. It's definitely meiser sheni vadai, and therefore you do muzzle the ox. And where am I? Whereas the second brisa, which says l'sachsim shobadisha applies, and you have to allow the animal to eat, is because it's meiser sheni of demai. That the meiser sheni that was produce that was purchased from an amma aretz, and you're separating trumas and meisers out of suffix. Not trumas, but meisers out of suffix, including meiser sheni. So it's meiser sheni of demai, right? At the end of the day, rov ameyaretz ma'asun hein, as we know, most ameyaretz do actually separate meiser. So you're only separating out of suffix, and that would not override lo sachsim shor b'disho, and therefore lo sachsim shor b'disho applies. Hashda asas lachi. Oh, so now once already we're making this chilik that, oh, okay, the first brisa is talking about Meiser Sheni Vade, the second brisa is talking about Meiser Sheni of Demai. Say the same thing about Truma. That the first brisa, I know it doesn't make any sense, but there is no such thing as Truma of Demai. We'll get there in a second. But let's just say the same thing, that the first brisa is talking about Truma of Demai and Vadai, and therefore the Sachsom Shor B'disho does not apply. You do muzzle the animal. And the second brisa is talking about Truma of Demai, which is suffix, and therefore the Sachsom Shor B'disho does apply. But so where am I? So hasa the asa is lachi truma nami loikasha kam b'truma vade kam b'truma's demai. Let's say the first price is talking about truma vade, the second price is talking about truma demai. But b'shloma ma'aser demai ika, to which the Gemara says, people, there is such a thing as ma'aser of demai. That's what demai is. Demai is that the Amei Haaretz had no problem separating Truma because that's only 2% or even less. But Meiser is already a bigger deal. It's 10% of the crop. Then Meiser Sheni is another 10%. That's a lot. Not every Amei Haaretz would separate that. So Bishlama Meiser Demai Ika, there is such a concept of Meiser Sheni of Demai. Ela Truma's Demai Miika, is there such a concept of Truma of Demai? But we learn in the Brisa, Afu Bitel Savidoi. Yechanan Kohen Gadol was mevatel vidui maisris, that when every 3 years you had to make sure that any maisris in any meiser sheni that had to be brought to Yerushalayim was brought, and you say bi'arti hakodesh nerabayis v'gam nasati lalevi, and I also gave my meiser rishon to a Levi. But the thing is that we learned in Masechta Yevamos that because the Levim didn't, I believe because the Levim didn't come properly to Eretz Yisrael by Bayis Sheni, so there was a knas that Meiser would be given to the Kayanim. So therefore, it's no longer shaykh to say v'gam nasativ leLevi. So therefore, he was mevatel vidoy Meiser. V'gozer ala demai, and he is the one who instituted demai. That if you purchase produce from an Amei Haaretz, you have to separate Meiser out of suffix. Yisrael, because he sent across all of the borders of Eretz Yisrael, V'ra and Yisrael Shaloi Hayu Mafrishin, that not everybody would separate Meisris. So therefore he said that the people have to separate Meisris. So the Truma Gedola Bilvad, that they're only separating Truma Gedola. So therefore it doesn't make sense to say that the first price is talking about Truma Vada and the second price is talking about Truma Demai. But Loi Kasha Kam B'Trumas Meiser Vada Kam B'Trumas Meiser Demai. Oh. But you can say, no, don't talk about Truma of Demai and Truma of Vada, because there's no such thing as Truma of Demai. But there's Trumas Meiser of Demai. There is, right? Meaning you separate, so you purchase produce from an Amei Haaretz, and then you separate Meiser, and you give that to the Levi. The Levi then needs to separate Trumas Meiser, and then that goes to the Kohen, and that is treated like Truma, and that would apply to the mice. So you could say that the first price is talking about Truma's Meiser Vadai, so therefore the animal would not eat it, and you muzzle the animal. The second price is talking about Truma's Meiser of Demai, and therefore Losachsim Shor B'disho would apply. Okay, that was the complicated part. That was the slow, complicated part of the daf. And like the double negative kind of parts. But I think from this point it gets easier, and certainly from a little bit further. The last part of today's daf is not going to be very difficult. Ba'omine mivsheshes, they asked mivsheshes hoysa ocheles umatrezes. You hear this? If the ox was eating, it was threshing, it was eating, but the ox had shilshul, diarrhea, which I just watched some YouTube videos about ox and threshing. You don't want an ox with shilshul threshing your wheat. Ba'amine Rav Sheshes. If it was eating while it was threshing, but it had shilshul, so mau. So then what? Mishum look, is the whole point of lesachsim shobedisho is that you have to allow the animal to eat because because eating is good for the animal. Well, in this case, the animal of shilshul, it's not good to eat so much. Or maybe it's about the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable if it sees all this wheat and it's unable to eat from it. But the thing is, the animals sometimes depends on the setup, but the animals in some videos I saw, they would go in circles. So I guess once you do one lap around, you're going to get back to your own shilshul. Now let's go right. Alright, well, you'd still want to eat that. The chazim mitztar. But there's other setups for threshing. You can have a lot and it isn't necessarily going in circles. It could check out the videos. It's interesting. Yeah. Why not? Okay, so the Mitzar v'achazir mitztar. Amalu Rav Sheshes says Rav Sheshes Tanisur Rav Shim ben Yochai. Omer says Rav Shim ben Yochai maybe kashinim b'soidla shekashinim yafos lo min hakol. Well, Rav Shim ben Yochai had. Are you gonna? Is this daf gonna be on Lag Boimer? Rav Shim ben Yochai. Chaver, should I go to Har Meron this year? It's gonna be a big schlep. We just learned about Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. It could be cool to go to the kever Reb Shimon ben Yochai or Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. We just learned all about him. Shakashin Yafusla Minakol. Reb Shimon ben Yochai had said that you should feed the animal vetch because vetch is the best. So we see it's about being what's good. So Shmamina Mishum Demaile Lahu Shmamina. So we see that it's about what's good for it, and if it has shulshul, it's not good. Iboilu, they ask the kasha. Maushi Yoimar Adam L'Nochri. Okay, or can a Yid say to a Nochri, right? So if a Yid rents out his ox to a Nochri, can he say to a Nochri, while my ox is threshing, muzzle its mouth? Chasum Parosi V'doshba, muzzle its mouth and thresh. Miyamin, do we say Kiyamin Amira L'Nochri Shvus Hanimila L'Nin Shabbos D'Isr Skilo Aval Chasim D'Isr Lav Loi? Do we say that Amira L'Nochri, asking a Nochri to do something that you yourself are not allowed to do? Do we say that applies on Shabbos? As we learn from Masechta Shabbos, Amira L'Nochri is a Shvus, is also midrabanan, because Shabbos where Melach is in Isser Skila, so we say even Amira L'Nochri is a problem, but maybe just by a lav of L'Sachsim Shabadisho, maybe Amira L'Nochri would be okay, or maybe Amir L'Nochri is always going to be a problem, regardless of what the severity of the punishment is for the thing that you're asking him to do. Tashma, come here. Nochri Adosh Biparoso Shel Yisrael. So we had learned earlier that if you have a Nochri who is threshing with the ox of a Yid, Eino over Mishum Bal Tachson. So the Yid doesn't violate Bal Tachson. Me'avur Delo over Ha-Isura Ika. Look, he's not violating. He's not over and above. It's like a pater aval aser. He's not violating a lav. Okay, mazel tov, but it's not allowed. It's not mutter l'chatchila. It's not encouraged. So, and for the Gemara, but dinu the isur namileka. No, actually, it's completely mutter. Actually, so why does it say eino over? Say mutter. Ve'aydi the Tana Sefer Yisrael adosh biparoso shanochri over. Well, because right after that it says that if a Yid is renting the ox of a Nochri and he muzzles the mouth of the ox, he would be over. So Tana Reisha Eino over. So the Reisha says the opposite, which is Eino over, but really it's mutter. It's being symmetrical. It's being consistent with the same lashon that in the Sefer it says over. So in the Reisha it says Eino over, but the truth is it's really mutter. Tashma coming to the Shalchul L'Avur D'Shmuel, that they sent from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel to Shmuel, to Avur D'Shmuel. Halein Torei Deganovin Aramoe, Deganvin Aramoe, U Meganchin Yason Mahu. So apparently what would happen is, so if a yid's not allowed to castrate an animal. So if a yid has an ox, and I guess apparently the ox will be a better plowing ox without the beitzin, castrated. The thing is, the yid can't castrate his ox. So with a nochri who has a positive relationship with the yid can quote unquote steal the ox from the yid, castrate the ox, and return the ox. So the yid isn't doing it, but the nochri is doing it for him. So they sent to Shmuel, halin tori these oxen diganvin aramoi, that the Arameans steal them from the Yidden, umeganchin yasun, and they castrate them. Mao. So what happens? So Shalachlu, we sent to them, ha'aroma isavid, they're being sneaky, bu arimu alayu v'yizdabun. Well, we're gonna sneak them, i.e. we're not gonna let them get away with it, and they have to sell those oxen. The Yidden cannot benefit from these oxen that the Nochri castrated for them. So we see that, so we want to argue that Amir Nochri is a problem even by a love of not castrating. Amar Papa says, Papa, actually the people in Eretz Yisrael, they held that actually the Bnei Noach are also not allowed to castrate animals, and therefore therefore the Yid, there was another thing at play here. The reason why it's off limits is not necessarily because of Amir L'Nochri, but because of the Yidden were violating, by allowing this to happen, they were violating Lifnei Ivil Ositi Michshol, because the Nochri also was not allowed to do this. So Rava L'Meimar Yimkor L'Shchita. So Rava thought that when we say that you have to sell these animals, you have to sell them to slaughter, because the ox is now a better ox. It's been castrated. It's a better work. It's better for plowing. So if you sell it for plowing, you're going to get more money from it, and you're going to benefit from the castration. So therefore, Rava says you have to sell it for slaughter, because to sell it for slaughter, it's not worth any more money because it's castrated. Maybe it's taka worth a shtickle less, Amalei Abaye says to Rava, Dayan shekanasta aleim mechira. It's enough that you're forcing them to sell it. You don't have to be particular to say you have to sell it for shchita. You could sell it for plowing also, and if you make a little bit of extra money, that's okay. The point is that you went through this whole thing of castrating your animal so that you can use it, and now you're not allowed to use it. That's enough of a punishment. If you want to sell it for shchita, fine. If you want to sell it for plowing, that's also fine. Pshita b'noi gadol ki acher domi. Certainly, if you were to transfer this ox to your son who is an adult, that would be considered enough of a transfer. B'nei ka'in mai. What about your son who is a ka'in, who is a minor? Rav Achai osar, Rav Ashi shari. Rav Achai said osar. Rav Ashi says muter. Miremur marzutra va'amru lo anu treich sidei. Michalfe Adade, interesting. So Merimah Marzutre, some say it was those two Hasidim. They would just switch their animals with each other, which sounds like interesting. If I understand correctly, it sounds like basically they would allow their animals to be castrated so that they would be better plowing animals, but then they can't benefit from it, so they would just swap with each other. They swap each other's animals, and then apparently all good. By Rami Bar Chome asked the kasha, what if you put a thorn in the animal's mouth so that it can't eat while it's threshing? Well, I don't understand what the question is. Obviously, you can't do that. If you put a thorn in the animal's mouth, you're preventing it from eating. That would be lo sachsim shor b'disha. What if a thorn got in the animal's mouth? Do you now have to remove it so that it can eat while it's threshing? Here bits lo ari mibachutz mao. If he took a lion and placed the lion outside to freak out the animal so that it will have no appetite. Here bits lo chasim ma'ayisai. What do you mean? You can't do that. Obviously, you're preventing it. You're actively preventing it from eating by scaring it. What if a lion was waiting, which just plopped itself down outside and freaked out the ox? do you have to remove do you have to scare away the lion? Good luck. What if you take the animal's child and put it outside of the threshing zone, and now it's distracted, by its child being there? So then, can you do that? What if the animal was thirsty? Do you have to give it water so that it can then eat? Or is it like, well, it's thirsty, it's not going to eat, not my problem? What if you put some kind of a blanket or something, you somehow cover the grain so that the animal doesn't see that it's there and won't have an appetite for it, but it's still walking all over it, above the blanket or whatever? Well, out of all these questions, at least answer one of them. The Tana that we learned in the Brisa, well, if a fellow is renting out his ox, he can kind of starve the ox in advance so that he could save money on food, because when the ox goes to thresh, he'll just eat from that. All right. Additionally, a hack can be if the owner of the grain, I guess I can understand. He's like, okay, so I have all this wheat that I harvested, and these oxen are going to thresh it, but they're also going to eat it, which means I'm obviously losing grain. So we're saying what he can do is he could take hay and spread out hay on top of the grain, so that together with the grain, he's also eating hay, and it minimizes the amount of grain that's being eaten. So therefore we want to say that's similar to putting some kind of a cloth over the grain so that it doesn't eat the grain. So which we say, yeah, but those are different. Shani awesome to call achla. No, it's different, because putting a cloth, some kind of blanket or something over the grain is preventing the animal from eating at all. Here he's just putting hay on top of it. The animal's still going to eat grain, but it's also going to be eating a lot of hay, but it's not completely preventing the animal from eating any of the grain. It's just going to eat less of it. Alternatively, alternatively, what it means is that before the animal is going to thresh, the balabais can feed it. It can feed it hay in advance so that it doesn't have much of an appetite, so that then when it goes to thresh, it threshes and it's not eating. Rabbi Yonasan asked Rabbi Simoi, what if you muzzle the ox outside of the threshing zone? So shor bedisha amar achmana v'ala bedisha. Who do we say? Look, the issue, the isser is to muzzle an animal while it's threshing, but here you're muzzling it before it's threshing. Or more perhaps lo sidosh b'chasim amar achmana. Or maybe what the Torah is saying is, don't have an animal thresh while it is muzzled, and therefore I don't care when you put the muzzle on. If it's threshing in a state of being muzzled, that's going to be a problem. Amalei, mi beis ovich, atolomet Reb Simoi responds to Rabbi Yonasan and says, well, you can learn it from your own sort of family. Meaning he was a kohen, apparently. But apparently somewhere else it implies he wasn't. Anyways, Yain v'sheichar al tesh, it says by the Kahanim that you can't drink wine or intoxicants, ata uvincha uvanecha itoch, you and your children with you, when you go into the Mishkan to do the service. I don't know, you could read it as a question, or maybe just a statement, that meaning we could, so, I don't know, let's read it as a question. I don't know. It's the same concept. Meaning, is that to say that you can't drink wine in the Mishkan, but maybe you could drink wine, you could do pregame, right? Get off fashnikit, and then go to the Mishkan. Yeah, but the Torah says that the point is that you have to be able to distinction between what's kodesh and what's chulin, and what's chol. And if you're drunk, fashnikit, you can't do that. So, rather what it means is that while you're doing the malacha in the Mishkan, you cannot be fashnikit. At the time of the threshing, there should be no muzzling. So I don't care if you muzzle it in advance, it makes no difference. At the time that animal is threshing, it must be able to eat. somebody who muzzles a cow, v'amazavek b'kilayim, or somebody who attaches like a cow and a donkey to a cart, right? Both of those things, so it's obviously also to thresh with a muzzled cow, and it's also to have two different species, a cow and a donkey, pull a cart together because they go at different speeds and strengths and things like that. But here, he didn't thresh with this muzzled cow. He didn't actually pull the cart with these two different animals. He just set the stage. He muzzled an animal. He connected an ox and a donkey to a cart, but he didn't actually lead the cart. Somebody else did. So potter. So he's potter. The one who's in trouble, the one who gets makis for being violating the law, is the one who actually threshes with that muzzled animal, or the one who actually drives the cart with the kilayim animals, with the combination of an ox and a donkey. He's the one who was in trouble. We're going to stop here. That was Daf Tzadi of Masechta BavaMetzia. It feels like a milestone, but the big milestone is going to be in another 10 days from now, Daf Kuf. I think, for most Masechtas, I think Daf Kuf is kind of a turning point. The next Masechta that we're learning is Bava Basra. Kuf is like not much of a stepping point in Bava Basra because you still have another 76 pages. But that's an under azach. I'm very curious to see how Bava Basra is going to go. I have big hopes for the Rashbam. I have big hopes that the Rashbam we're going to fall in love with the Rashbam because he's going to make those pages tiny and manageable. That would be great. But anyways, that was Daf Tzadi. We talked a lot about the Sachsim Shor Bedisho and Trumis and Maisris and when it applies and things like that. And peace out.